Welcome to the Alchemist of Self podcast. Today, I am honored to have a remarkable guest who has dedicated over 2 decades to empowering women to embracing their authenticity and step into their unique brilliance in this lifetime. Welcoming our special guest, Marissa Lewis. She has 20 plus years of expertise in marketing and communications, and also has 10 years experience as a business owner, confidence coach, keynote speaker, trainer, and retreat facilitator. What a remarkable woman. Welcome, Marissa.
Oh my gosh, thank you for that beautiful introduction. Thank you for having me. I feel so privileged to be here.
I'm so excited for this conversation because I myself have also been so much tapped into this path of authenticity, living authentically to our true selves, and expression and following and paving our own path. So before we dive into this discussion, I would love to start off with the question of what does it mean for you personally to live as your most authentic self, be your most authentic self?
That is such a great question, and it's a really powerful question. It's funny because as we shift into that awakening and more awareness into our greatest potential, and we start to navigate through all of those previous traumas and previous, like negative self-doubts and all the things, and we start to understand we get to choose. I think when we step into quote authenticity, sometimes I question, what is even authenticity? Like, this is the truth. This is where I'm at right now. And I was just talking to a client and I said, for me, it's waking up every day and asking, how do I feel good? Am I feeling good? It's about tuning into how I am in the present moment. And I think as women entrepreneurs, career women, mommies, partners, daughters, sisters, we hold ourselves in such great, what I like to say is the power of holding it all together, and we get really distracted, I think. And so how do we bring ourselves back to feeling good? Because I think when we build momentum from that place, that is when we're in our most authentic self. Joy at our absolute origin, whole, complete, fulfilled. And everything that's built from there, is then created and co-created into the greatest self of you, or the greatest vision of you. So it means so much to me to be able to walk in these shoes, especially after going through a lifetime of choosing a path of lots of resistance, resisting my own success and power. I think we all do that too, because it's really scary there, right? So it means it's a world that I can do it, and do it in a way that it's inspiring others to know that they can too do the same, and walk their own path, like you said, pave their own lane, and it's not about, I speak on two sides of the coin here. I think, we have to be our own cheerleaders when we're on the self-discovery journey. We have to, when we're in a transformation phase, understand that we are the ones that pick ourselves up. But together, we can go further. Yeah, and I love it. I love being able to share this with other women and see them go faster and further than I did.
I love that answer. It's so beautiful. And that leads me actually to the next question, because obviously this path hasn't been easy. It never is, right? What I believe in is there isn't ever a easy path. There is just the difference between a path of not following your truth, what makes you joyful, what lights you the fuck up, what is your passion, what is your purpose. Like you said, waking up in the morning and finding that joy, that thing that lights you up, being excited about something.
Yeah.
Of course, I understand that you have gone through your own journey to even get to those realizations, as we all do, and as you mentioned, a very powerful thing as well as being able to be self-led, self-aware enough, take responsibility over your own joy, over your own healing, and understanding what needs to be done, what is not fitting in anymore, what is not serving you anymore, and having that understanding and enough courage, bravery to be able to self-lead yourself to creating the life that you desire, the day-to-day feeling that you want to live into. So what has your journey entailed up until almost, I want to take it back as far as you are willing to take it back to, but when you first started to almost awaken to your realization of your power, of what it means for you to be authentic, what that path actually looked like, where you almost got brought to your knees and were like, fuck, this can't be like this anymore. I have to change something.
Oh, yeah.
What's your journey up until that point, and what was almost that breaking point that broke you into your authenticity?
Great question. Now, just to start, at the heart of everything I teach, no matter what my title or what the strategy is, it is self-leadership. It is learning to lead yourself in your own power, in your own mindset, in your own thoughts, in your own conversations, and in your own decisions, in your own sales, in your own business, in your own teams. So that is 100%. I love that you raised that point, because that is the pivotal, kind of grounding that I have come to in my career, as a mum, as a wife, and wife to be, I should say, and as a loving, devoted daughter, sister, friend. And I think this is it. The self-leadership is everything. So where did I have that awakening? Where my life was so turbulent, and I've actually been brought to my knees a couple of times. I'm not going to lie. I didn't just have this awakening and decide to go all in on healing myself, but it was when I really decided it was time to heal me, because I was so sick and tired. I always knew there was something special inside me, and of course, we're not taught to be loud and be bright. We're always taught to be quiet, sit quietly, don't be too much, don't say too much, don't be too loud. I was always on my own little buzz, right? This world to me was rainbows and skittles. I did have a really great upbringing up until my parents separated. So, but in saying that, what I have discovered is there were a lot of other things that were going on in my life. Like myself and my brother, we were probably one of 5 Māori people at a very non-Māori school. We went to a Catholic school, and I'm not Catholic now. I don't hold any religion. I have my own relationship with God. I have my relationship with Source and my two of my ancestors. And I truly tap into that on the daily, on the hour. You know what I mean? And I think that authenticity is understanding when we expand in our physical reality, that we are tapping into a non-physical, energetic field, which is where our gifts lay, because we're pulling in wisdom from, our ancestors, and wisdom from a greater source and power and divine. So I don't even stand here and say I created all this myself. I couldn't possibly have created all of this myself. And in those times where I was on my knees, I've been through, drug abuse, sexual abuse, young teen pregnancy, abortion, domestic violence, gangs, drugs, you name it. I've been there. I wanted to come to this life experience and experience it all, obviously. And thankfully, when I was brought to my knees, it was before I moved to Australia. It would have been 2006. And I had overdosed, and it was an accidental overdose. It wasn't an intentional one. But at the same time, at that point in my life, I kind of was playing with fire, because I don't think I would have minded if I'd gone. I was at that point where I was so low within my self-worth, so low within the decisions I was making, that just keep leading me to make even worse decisions and more poor decisions and more poor decisions. And, as we go into that deep down spiral into our mindset and our physical, this is where we can obviously create these darkness. And then, like you said, it's not ever meant to be easy. I don't believe that we came into this life experience to experience ease. Yes, we can create ease and flow, but we came here to live, right? So it's finding that beautiful balance. And I always teach this. It's like we get to be that soulful, mindful, beautiful, wairua that we are, our greatest, spirit, and her greatest grand. And I visualize her as this golden, freaking 8 foot tall, with these incredible wings and dripping in gold, and just soothing and moving, and just like a hour, like the river. And she's always with me, but I get to also be in this life experience. And I think when I almost died, I mean, that's a great point, right? You're either like, I'm going to choose to make the most of what I have left because I've got a second chance, or you don't. And I was on a crossroad that day. It was when the doctor said to me, in the morning, I obviously had overdosed and I'd been in hospital for 8 hours. Was not a pretty sight. Woke up to my dad at the end of my bed with tears running down his face. This is a strong, mighty man who never cries, doesn't show emotion. And, I could see his pain because he just felt so helpless. And I remember thinking that day, I just don't know how I got here because I'm a good person. I knew I was a good person. I wasn't a bad person. I think a lot of us make bad decisions and then we choose that to be our identity. We forget in our most origin and core that we are whole and complete and authentic and beautiful and all of the things. But I had created an identity for myself that I was useless and unworthy, and this is what I had created, right? But the doctor said to me that morning, you should have died. Your heart stopped. The overdose should have killed you, but your will to live is stronger than your will to die. Don't let me see you in here again. Whew, I still get emotional with that. That was my point. That's when I was on my knees, literally. And I walked out of that hospital. And I'm not saying I haven't made mistakes since, but from that moment is when I went, something's got to give here. Like, I just cannot keep playing with my life in this way. Um, I really loved people. I loved being around people. I was always very naive. Like I said, I thought people were all good people and everybody acted from a really great intentional place. And that meant I didn't have boundaries in my life. That meant I was constantly people pleasing. And all those, principles that we follow that lead us to, again, looking for external fulfillment, right? And as the pain builds in your life, you create these energetic walls around your heart, and then you start to make decisions from the mind, because you're so afraid to feel. And that's where I was at. I just didn't want to feel anything. It was all too much to feel. And I'm sure you understand that. Like, when you are feeling everything around you constantly, and then you're also experiencing disappointment and letdown because you've created a situation where you've had expectations of somebody or some people, and it's just continued and continued and continued. And then before you know it, you're on this frequency of low vibration and you're attracting in low vibrational experiences. And you just sometimes don't know how to crawl out of that. So that for me was like, okay, I'm going to rebuild. That's where I started talking to God again. I'm not going to lie. That day I walked out of that hospital, I fell to my knees and I said, if I choose to make this right and I treat myself with love and healthiness, and I, walk a different path, will you give me a child? Because that's a part of the story. Was after I fell pregnant at 13, I then aborted, and then I was told I'd never have a child again. So I, at that point in my life, didn't know what my purpose was, because I couldn't be a mum. Like, all my brothers and sisters had 2 or 3 kids. And I was like, I was being punished. I honestly thought I was being punished. And so I had this corridor with the greater powers. And I said, so yeah, that was kind of the moment for me. And it was from there, I stripped everything right back to the basics. Obviously, I walked away from alcohol and drugs, and I just really focused on understanding my body, my mind, and myself. And I went through therapy. I didn't go to rehab, but I did go through therapy. I then also found yoga and breath. And, so that was the start of my healing journey. That's where it all began for me, in terms of, how do I express myself? How can I show up in a situation without feeling like I'm being confined, where I'm not being judged? It's because I needed to find the right environments, and I wasn't in the right environments. So that was kind of the beginning for me. That's where it all started for me. And that would have been, what am I now, 43, 23, probably nearly, 17, 18 years ago.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing so vulnerably your story. That's so powerful to witness how, just the path that has taken you on, and being able to be so compassionate for yourself still through those times, and having such deep understanding for all the past versions of yourself as well, why she showed up the way she did, and always understanding that she only did the best she ever could, like we always do. Most people, like you say, I definitely agree, there's some very hurt people in this world that do some very horrible things, but most people are well intended and do try their best with all that they are able to be aware of, know of, have wisdom of, knowledge of, perspective of, etc. There's a couple of things I want to go into that came up for me during during that was as well how you were speaking about you knew that you were a good person and you knew that you were always leading from your heart, but even through that knowing and feeling of that as your truth, there was still the subconscious belief that you deserve to be punished, that you're not worthy. And
Mm-hmm.
this is something I dive into a lot with my work. I'm definitely a shadow worker. I've
Yeah.
been that since before I even knew that was the thing. Like since I was young, I've
Yeah.
had such hyper awareness of my own self-awareness and picking apart the why did I say that, or why did I behave that way, or etc. etc. So I definitely apply that in my work with my clients now because there's so much power in the shadows of bringing light to the shadows. And
Yeah.
just that in itself, just for people who don't maybe aren't familiar with the subconscious mind yet or aren't familiar what a big part it plays in, you think that, but I'm confident or I'm doing my best or la da 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 da, but then there's still that subconscious part holding you back from your truest expression, from your truest path, because you feel like you're not worthy. And this is a common thread I see with every single one of my clients and with myself, that you kind of come to these new chapters of yourself or these new layers, new upgrades, and still uncover like, holy shit, like I didn't realize there was that limiting belief.
Mm-hmm.
And how it does take intentional work to uncover those parts of yourself so that you can actually reclaim your power. So you can actually recognize where have you been unconsciously holding yourself back from your truest desires, from what you're truly worthy of. So I
Absolutely.
just wanted to point that out as well from what you were saying, is how we can be thinking that we're, you know, in the positive, all the positive aspects of ourselves, which are so true, but we have to visit those shadows as well to truly crack open into our greatness, into our truest
Yeah.
selves.
I think I'd love to add to that because I completely agree. And I think, the next stage for me to take more action in terms of who I am and what I stand for and the clarity that came with that was really inviting her in because she was the reason I survived. She was such a fucking fierce bitch. She was resilient. And I love her and I acknowledge her. And when I feel her wanting to come out and play, because she does, I just say to her, we're good, like I don't squash her. And I think that's the big key is a lot of us carry so much shame, it's that extra weight. I'm so shy. I still feel a little bit of a simmering or I suppose a dense energy when I think of some of the situations I got myself into. But I have learned to accept and love that that was all a part of the process. And like you said, it was only me going through those shadows and those darker times where I was able to choose the light, because that's really what it comes down to. It's you making a decision, because there was no special conversation that happened for me. It was my own conversation with myself, and it was going, girl, you are so fucking much more than enough. And it is time for you to start to do the things that make you feel self-empowered, to self-lead, like you said earlier. And whatever that looks like, some people want to sit under a tree, some people want to go running, some people want to be around people, whatever it is that makes you feel elevated and supported and loved and valued, seen. And also that, because I'm an advocate for self-love, because obviously before I became a business coach, I was more into self-love coaching. And again, being a yoga teacher and doing yoga, I was more about spirituality. And I was a very different coach than I am marketed very differently than I am today. I still bring all of that mahi into my work. But there was something else you said there, and it's about that self-inquiry. I think when we have the courage, as you mentioned earlier, to have a self-inquiry, like becoming that observer, and being able to really remove ourselves from the equation as what we think that we've created in ourselves as an identity. It's like, okay, if we were to take ourselves back to when we were born in our most origin moment, where we had no limitations, where we didn't feel hurt or pain, like we were so fucking open. We were so open to the world and so open to everybody and to the possibilities of this experience of being love. because that's what we came into this world. And it's only through experiences that we start to contract and contract and contract and then create all these other beliefs. And yeah, I think for me, it was the healing part. That was phase one. And then phase two was self-love and becoming so relentless. I was so relentless on my practices. I did mirror work. I bawled my eyes out. I went into the bush. I screamed. I got it all out of my body. I started to dance again. You know, like there was just so many things, and I started to understand how it all works. And then it became, okay, what am I going to do with this? You know, what am I going to do with my story? How am I going to use this so that those experiences don't feel wasted? You know, and how can I catch that person or that beautiful woman before she gets to that point? How can I use this? And obviously a step to that, the next phase was being vulnerable. You know, being able to actually talk about the experiences without shame, owning them, owning my shit, owning your shit. And like, she's fucking great and grand and brave and beautiful, and you know, yin and yang, baby, all day.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think it just comes back to, what do I choose in this moment? Because the elevation, whether you call it evil or God, like Satan or whatever you brand that darker thought, or, oh, I shouldn't be doing that. I'm conscious now. I shouldn't want to have a drink. I'm conscious now. I shouldn't want to go to the casino with my friends and have a cocktail and play the games. Oh, I'm conscious now. I shouldn't want to have sex, wild sex in crazy ways. You know, like, I'm so conscious now, but it's like, you're also a human being who wants to feel and feel alive. And she is just as worthy of being loved as the higher self of you too.
Yeah, yes, I love that. That just uncovered into that. And definitely, you know, I find as well, when you kind of are shifting into a new terrain, a new version of yourself, I find that it's almost this pendulum effect at times. You almost have to go so extremely to not always, but sometimes you go so extremely to the one side. And then you just find that time when it's time to just reel it back in and come into balance. As you're saying, you know, sometimes for people, when going through that awakening of your consciousness, and you feel like, but it has to look in this way, I have to be so pure, or so whatever the things are, right? And
Yeah.
you might go into that and realize, like you say, but I'm here in this human experience, and there is the yin and the yang, there's the light and the dark always. And it's not always dark as an evil, it's just
No.
the integration, it's the like transformation, it's the death and the rebirth that has to happen. It's a constant cycle, and that's something I've found with myself, and very, very familiar with this, is that constant death and rebirth, especially when you're so devoted to your own inner love, inner healing, inner growth. It's bound to come with it. It has, you know, you can't continue on with these upgrades, or this becoming of more of yourself and your truth, without shedding the layers that can no longer come with you forward. So of course there's going to be the time that you have to just have your complete death of identity, and sometimes that's just, you know, it's not a big deal, and at other times it's just like, what the fuck is going on? But
Absolutely.
but I feel like the more that you know, understand that that's part of the journey, you don't take it so, like, it obviously still shakes shit up, but
Yeah.
you have a perspective, you have almost like a bird's eye point of view of what you're going through, understanding that you will come out of it. It's not
Yeah.
forever, it's just a phase, it's just a season.
Yeah. And it is just a season. Every day is a new season, you know,
Yeah.
and I think every hour is a new season. You know, you could be having the most incredible, and I don't know about you, I can only speak for myself, but you know, I've had times where I'm just so focused and I'm healthy, I'm doing all the right things and my business is thriving. And then I'll just get the most random thought. They're like, oh, I want to have a girls' night. I feel like just going to get drunk. Like, it doesn't mean that I'm addicted to the alcohol. I don't attach anything to it anymore. Like, I think, you know, especially for someone coming out of addiction, if you're listening to this, like, when you do make that decision, you want better for yourself, whatever that looks like, obviously reach out, talk to people. That's something I didn't do soon enough. I didn't talk to people. I really convinced myself I was okay. I had it under control. I didn't fucking have it under control. And from there, once you start to get better, you might fuck up again. You might actually slip, but get back on the waka and keep rowing. And eventually, every time it might become a little less. It's the same with relationships. My previous, relationships were not very healthy, but each time I went through that experience, it was a little less painful. It was still maybe, resonance of, similar behaviors or attractions and stuff like that. But every time it just got a little bit better. And it's like, we can't just click our fingers and perfect, or what we think is perfection in these areas of our lives. I think it's just permission to experience yourself. And I think the resonance is not the act half the time, it's how we treat ourselves after the act. And that then spirals us into making more poor decisions for ourselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I know that you and I have both been a long time on this journey already, and sometimes I find that I forget that there's a lot of people out there who what seems like just second nature to me is not even being discovered by someone else yet.
100%.
Yeah, so I would like us to actually just use this time to open up a bit more for someone who is in the sort of beginning realizations of things that need to change in their lives, or with their own self, or paving their own path, or just day-to-day routines. And also, having the first step of awareness, having awareness that, okay, I don't like this, something needs to change here. And
Yeah.
sometimes that can be also really painful, having those awarenesses. Sometimes it can be painful recognizing when you've been the one playing the role of causing these destructive behaviors, or calling in these people that you're almost the one that's been unconsciously creating it for yourself without
Yeah.
knowing it, right? And it's not your fault, and I want to state that it's not as such your fault. But the first thing is this awareness, and then taking responsibility, but with so much love,
Yep.
understanding, and forgiveness. I find that even as deep as I am into this journey, there, like I said before, we still have our upgrades, we still have our moments of realizing deeper parts of ourselves that are only just showing face for the first time, etc. And sometimes it's fucking uncomfortable, and you're just like, fuck, like, have I actually been behaving like this? Like, unconsciously, it's me. It wasn't that person I've been pointing the finger at, it's me. And
Oh
it's
my
so
God.
uncomfortable in that moment. You just
Yeah.
feel so gross and so yuck about yourself. But what I've found, and I'd love for you to also just speak into what has been helpful for you, but for me, it is tapping into practices like literally in that moment saying to myself, but I still love and accept and forgive myself anyway. Catching yourself in literally that moment when you feel all that yuckiness, all that disgust, all that ugliness of having that realization of what you've been behaving like or showing up as, and still
Yeah.
so much love and acceptance and forgiveness. And then going into other practices like journaling, getting it all out, just expressing it all out onto paper, utilizing breath work, tapping, EFT, emotional freedom technique,
Yeah.
is so
Yeah.
powerful for releasing all the old. I love to call it almost like shadow work paired with rewiring, because it
Yeah.
basically is.
That
It's
is. Yeah.
tapping
Well,
into
that's
those
exactly
shadows.
what you're doing. Yeah.
Mhm.
I
So
think, oh, sorry, you go.
no. So yeah, I would love for you to as well tell the listeners sort of tangible actions that you've applied in those moments, in the moments of the discomfort, of the ugly, of the awareness, when you recognize these shadows, when it is in that ugliness and messiness. What have you done in those moments to move through it, transmute it?
100%. And I love this because this is really important. And these are still practices and principles I return to now. And, I think when we are in a situation that makes us feel less than, or, we go immediately into that default of self-judgment. It is just about catching yourself quicker. Like, we are still going to react. It doesn't matter how conscious you are still going to be triggered. You are still going to be fired up by things. You are still going to be passionate about things that you believe in. And there is going to be duality and polarity. And so, when we do behave or act in a way that doesn't make us feel really good, I keep bringing it back to, do I feel good? Then it's a case of, okay, what steps do I need to take? As I said, some people like to plunge into a cold shower. Some people like to go for a walk. I personally love to go plant my feet into Papatuanuka, into Mama Gaia, Mama Earth, and I hold a tree. This is a practice that really works for me. Any tree, find a tree, barefoot, and I give it back to Mama. I give it back to her because I know she can hold it. And I thud my heels. So I come up on my tippy toes and I thud my heels into her and I feel the vibration. And as I thud, I say, I don't want this anymore. I give this back. This is no longer serving me. So that's a practice that I use. Don't worry about how you look. I think one of the key things about this self-transformation journey is stop giving a fuck what people think about you. As soon as you can do that, like boom, 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 baby, this is where you start to really expand and express yourself in your most unique way. And I'm all for it. Like, I'm here for that. The other thing is what you said, babe, is journaling. Oh my God, it's like not the most complicated thing to do. A pen and a paper. It doesn't have to be a fancy journal. Find some fucking paper somewhere. Get out your post-it notes. Get out some crayons from your kids, thing. Just start to get it out of you, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to become your thoughts, right? Thoughts become things, yes, but not every thought is something you have to choose. Just be mindful. Like, I don't know about you, and I'm going to bring this up because this is a conversation I brought to the table with a whole group of women that I work with. And I'm like, the other day I was driving along and I thought, I wonder what would happen at my funeral if I drove into that pole. Right? Random as fucking thought. Definitely not suicidal. So let me just quote that. And in the most happiest place I've ever been in my entire life. But then all these other people started sharing what their random thoughts were. And it's like, in that moment, do you start to question, am I a bad person? Or do I have darkness around me? Or like, do you start to create this unnecessary story based on a thought that you had? Or do you just laugh it off? Like, this is where choice comes in, the power of choice. So number one, go out and do something tangible. If you're feeling icky or you're feeling like there's some extra weight on your dense energy, go pick up some stones and throw them into the water. And with every stone you throw, you give away that horrible emotion. You give it back to Tongaroa, to the water, to Mama, right? And it's like, you can actually physically release by doing something tangible if you're that type of a person. If you don't yet have that connection within your mind to feel like you can let go through that process, go and make it tangible. Right? Pick up, those fitness balls, medicine balls that you can throw really hard on the ground. Like, I used to love it. Get your boxing gloves on and find a boxing bag. Don't go hit someone else. But, tangible stuff helps me. I love to get it out, and I love to roll out. Like, I love to express myself. Like, I scream into a pillow sometimes. Like, I know that I'm feeling so angry, but I'm not angry. It's just a feeling. And this is the thing, right? We're led by our emotions. Our emotions are our cues, but that is not what makes us who we are. We are not that emotion. We are not that thought. And so I think it's just understanding, oh, I'm feeling this way, self-awareness, as you said. And do I need to just write shit out? Like, journaling doesn't have to be conformed. It can be just whatever comes out, most random things. It's just getting it and separating yourself from those thoughts. Visualization is another key thing. Closing your eyes and actually asking yourself questions. Is this really true for me? Is this in fact true for me? Has this in fact yet happened? Because a lot of us create this story. This is what creates anxiety. We overuse that frontal cortex of our brain, and we start to tell the brain starts to tell the body that something has actually occurred when it hasn't. But that can also work in a reverse manner for how do you create change? Right? You start to visualize that change, and you start to tell your brain this is normal, and then the brain communicates that with the body, and then the body starts to reform its cells, and all of a sudden you have that conversation with someone, or someone comes into your life to be a support for you, or you receive an email randomly, or whatever it might be. So it's just that, I think it, like you said, comes back to full self-awareness without judgment and with full love for yourself and the fact that you're still here.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And even just pointing out to the listeners is it takes time and practice. You're not going to get it on the first go. And be patient with yourself. Be devoted, be committed with yourself. It's the devotion and commitment that compounds and will take you further and further and deeper with yourself. And a couple of things I'd love to touch on there is the first is following your nudges and trusting the nudges, trusting that whether it's a inner voice, whether it's a feeling in your body, a knowing, a vision, whatever form it comes in for you, tuning deeper and deeper into the subtle senses that are literally the cookie crumbs leading you on your path to your own self-discovery, to your self-empowerment, and to ultimately your authenticity and confidence. And the more that you lean into that trust with those nudges, whether it is like, watch that one YouTube video, makes no logical sense. And then when you watch it, it's literally got all the fucking answers that you've been
Yeah,
like questioning about, or reach out to that person or whatever, or try this new thing, sign up for that workshop, whatever it is, trust yourself. Don't go into the logical of, oh, but that doesn't make sense. Like A plus B doesn't equal that C. Like, fuck that. The
yeah,
logical mind only knows as far as it knows, the database that it has already experienced, and the mind is powerful. I'm not going to sit here and say that it doesn't play its role. You can do so much powerful rewiring, resetting with your mind, but there's only so far your mind can take you, where you need to tune into your body's wisdom, into your own inner guidance, into your own intuition to lead you, and follow those fucking nudges. They will always lead you down your correct, authentic path. So
excellent.
definitely finding, the more that you practice it, the more you will trust it. And the more that you prove to yourself each time when you listen to it, you will
Yes.
build confidence with yourself to keep following your own fucking path.
That's it, in your pocket, in your gut, in your intuition. Like, how many times have you ignored it and where has it led you? Like, that's what I love to say to my clients. Like, so next time you feel that, and like you said, your body is constantly communicating with you, and those cues are so important. And it's just pausing, that taking that moment to just pause and just ask yourself, like, does this feel good? Does this feel right for me? If you hear that no, then don't. But it's also not our job to figure out how. And I think that's biggest problem is a lot of us have that sense of control, and it's not because we're controlling, it's because we're afraid of the outcome if it doesn't work out. And we let ourselves down. Like, maybe we're making a decision to change our lives. Maybe we want to start saving money and actually valuing money a bit better. Maybe we want to invite more healthy relationships into our lives. But we've fucked up for so many years, and for so long, we just were so afraid that we're going to fuck it up again. And so it's like, why don't you just stop, and recognize that, yeah, we're only even one choice away from a very different life. But those, like you said, little choices will take time. And oh my gosh, in my business, like 10 years it took me to have that overnight success. Like, I'd had some successful months, and then I, had some shit months, and then I had a really successful year, and then I lost everything. And then I had, and it just navigating through that journey and bringing myself back to these basic principles. Okay, where am I at? What am I doing differently? What am I allowing to kind of take the forefront or steer my ship? Because your mind can be your greatest ally, or it can be your greatest enemy. I think the mind is fantastic when you understand how to work with it and dance with it.
Yes, yeah. And yeah, just tapping into that realization that at any given moment you have the power for change. You have the power to recreate yourself. And one practice that I would love to offer for people is, again, coming back to the journaling, write down who you want to become, who feels like the most, like the next level version of yourself, the most authentic to you, but for you, for your pleasure, for your expression, for what lights you up, for what slightly pushes or maybe even majorly pushes you to your fucking edges and is going to allow you to grow. How does she show up, or he, she, they? How do they behave? What do they think? And with all that new belief and showing up, what does their day-to-day life look like? What do they do in the morning? What's the first thing they do? How do they go about their day? How do they communicate with others? Or you know, etc., etc., and just start stating it out, connecting in. And like you mentioned, if you are struggling with it, tapping into some guided visualization. There's a lot of free resources on YouTube that you can tap into, literally like your next level or your higher self guided
Mm.
visualization, and start allowing yourself to open up to the possibilities of what is possible for you. Who are you here to be and become? What is your next tangible move? And this is where it is stating out, how does she dress? How does she talk? How does she walk? How does she show up? What does she do? How does she behave? Those are your tangible steps. Write them down and start fucking doing them. Start taking action each day at a time, each step at a time. And sometimes it's scary, but it's meant to push you to your edges, because you are here to grow, and growth is never super comfortable. Like sometimes, like I said earlier, sometimes it feels like, oh, like everything's just happening, but it's because it's been compounding, is why it can have its moments of feeling like a breeze. But sometimes it's going to be super fucking uncomfortable. But understanding that each time you take that brave move, it builds on your confidence like a muscle. And the more that you take those steps into being brave, the more confident you will become with yourself, meaning that the next time it won't feel as massive and fucking scary. And you might have tools that you tap into. Like for me, it's like breath work, just tuning into the breath to calm your nervous system and be grounded and be able to be present in clarity for making that move. You know, so it is realizing that at any given moment you can rewrite your story, you can recreate who you want to become. There is
Mm.
nobody you owe anything to. There is no past version that you have to hold on to for someone else's comfort, because that's who they know you as, or who you even know yourself as. And sometimes it is scary, but
Mm.
recognizing each step you take, you become more confident, courageous, and more authentic with yourself.
Yeah, and I think that's, a really beautiful point. It is your story. You get to throw a plot twist in there. And I even found, as I, exited that world, I didn't think I was better than anyone. I just knew I wanted to be better than I was being and behaving. And although there was a lot of pushback, and that can also be scary because, you are so immersed into this identity and this environment that you've been around. And then all of a sudden you are better and you start sharing your story. And people, like, to this day, even with all the evidence, with all the growth, all the evidence of, sellout clients, programs, retreats, everything, there are still people from my past that still talk to me like I was 15 years ago or even 20 years ago. And it's, it used to frustrate me. It used to make me so wild. I'm like, listen, motherfucker, I'm not the same person as I was even a month ago, let alone 15 years ago. But then I realized, I'm like, oh, they're the ones stuck, not me. And I just pray over them, like, I just pray that you find enough, essence within yourself. And so for those listeners who might be wanting to make a shift or a change into a new environment, or you're starting your steps and on these little stepping stones, just know it's like visualizing, say you've got stepping stones into a lake and you're like here and you see that, the eighth stepping stone over there and you're like, I just want to be over there. And it's like you try and jump, you're going to slip and fall into the lake, right? It's you can see that last step that's going to get you the free dive into the lake and it's the safe dive. But there's all these steps that you must take and you must be okay with just taking those steps. And like you pointed out, babe, is that those steps will eventually lead you to where you want to go, but you must just know where you want to go and who you want to be in that process. It's the first thing I teach anyone that I work with. What you were saying is, when we can start to really act and breathe and talk and converse and like, what's my posture like? What am I choosing to do with my days? I had to pull myself out of it when I lost everything in 2019. The decision to not give it all up, and to not, it was the biggest lesson in my life, other than the time being in hospital. But, you talked about falling to your knees. This was the second time I was brought to my knees. And it, it was more frustrating in that time because I had been successful and then I had made decisions that I tried to leap over those stones. That's basically what I tried to do. I didn't take the steps slowly. And so, yeah, I stood on that eighth rock for about maybe a second and then I fell off and I lost everything. And so you know, the analogy of that is probably slightly different to what happened, but to have that confidence to come back was going straight back to the beginning. Like I had to go and become a beginner again. You know, like even though I'd known it and I'd done it and I'd taken those steps, I was like prepared to say, okay, I've got a new lesson here. What is the lesson here for me? Where did I miss that turning key? And I had to go right back to the beginning of not carrying shame, of rebuilding my belief again, of rebuilding my confidence again. So I think, you know, really valuable. I hope this is really useful for your listeners.
I love, this is exactly the direction I was wanting to go to next, is speaking a bit more into business and entrepreneurship, but definitely just touching quickly on what you were saying about how it is so important as well with those steps. What I've found with my journey as well is that you know what, well, once you get to the point of knowing what you desire, whether it is the clients or the home or the money, that whatever the thing is recognizing it's actually everything else that comes before that, from taking the steps towards it. If you weren't presented with the what could be almost considered sometimes it's as the setbacks, you're like, what the fuck, like I'm
Yeah.
taking a few steps forward and then now I'm like taking a few steps back, like what is this, like push and pull? But recognizing it's a cycle, you're never actually going backwards unless you're just not trying
Yes.
it. But it's always a cycle, and there's going to be the times where it feels like you kind of it's not progressing forward, but it's always progressing forward as long as you're devoted and committed. And what I've found is that if I would have just gotten the result like that without all those steps, I wouldn't even have been ready for it. I
No,
wouldn't have been ready. Yeah. And recognizing it's those steps where you learn the lessons, you grow, you expand, you become wise, you gain knowledge, and then you can actually hold that vision. And what you might find is either that vision is still relevant or it's
yeah,
not,
it's
or
not. And that can happen
more.
too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I love that because I think, you know, we teach people not to quit, and I speak on it all the time, but you know, sometimes whatever you're trying isn't actually for you. But again, that comes back to your own self-awareness, doesn't it? And does this actually make me happy? I think checking in with my vision every day is so it's a non-negotiable. I don't usually do non-negotiables, but it's like I have got to check in with that every single day, because the like humanness in me can take over. I don't always want to get up and do what I have to do. I love what I do. I do love my work, and you know, absolutely just thrive, and I'm so grateful. But there are still days where those little thoughts surface. I'm like, I don't feel like it today. I want to throw my coins. But I think what you also said, because you work with the body a lot as well, and the breath, you know, it is also about on a scientific explanation, as well as, you know, as you start to experience something, like we're not born with confidence. Okay. And if you don't have the confidence, that's where your courage has to proceed, because it's like the most confident people in the world you see and you might be admiring right now, they shit in their pants before they're doing what they're doing. Okay. Every time I go to get on stage, I still shit myself. I'm like, oh, I don't literally, but you know, I'm like, oh, spiritual is coming. Oh my gosh, I gotta go to the toilet. Or my knees are knocking. I mean, I've done it 1,000 times, but I still feel nervous. But that's the difference between the confident people and maybe those who are not showing confidence, is that they're allowing the fact that they haven't experienced it. And so what you were saying is, our nervous system then starts to expand. The body starts to feel more familiar. Oh, I did that reel that first time. Oh, I did say yes to getting onto that interview or that podcast. And I was so freaking free and my palms are sweaty. And, you know, but then once you've done it, your body's actually gone, and your brain's now gone, And so this is what happens. And that's where courage is such a cool thing. Like if my knees aren't knocking at least once a week, I'm not playing big enough.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And something that you mentioned earlier as well, when you said about the experience that you went through in 2019 of losing everything, I really want to tap into this because I feel like this doesn't get spoken about enough, is the times where you still have to come back to holding your belief and your vision enough in yourself and what you came here to do and what you came here to experience, to create, to be able to have such a massive fucking collapse And with well, I can't speak on your behalf, but what I've felt in slightly minor experiences is sometimes the shame
Oh
that
yeah.
comes with it. But this is what I've looked like to the outside, and now I've lost it all. I feel shame around it, guilt, embarrassment, etc. And those are all normal human feelings. And so I would love for you to touch into, how did you deal with that and then still be able to pick yourself up and hold your vision to keep
Yeah.
going?
Thank you so much. I love this question and I love sharing the reason. Okay, so just to give you a landscape and a little bit of context. So I was doing really well. I was 6 years into my business and I was here in Aotearoa. I was working out of Les Mills. I had my own boot camp, Mummy's boot camp. I was fully booked. I was doing network marketing and I was coaching mentorships and workshops and stuff like that. Everything was going so well. I was doing body competing. I came third in 2017. Everything was just so pumping. And then I had this opportunity to move away. I wanted to move to Australia because I thought that was going to be a springboard for my global branding, right? I mean, I already had a few global clients and things, but I thought, yeah, Aussie, springboard, better lifestyle, sunny. But what I failed to realize, which obviously didn't really come into my awareness until after everything had happened, is I didn't have community over there. I didn't have family. I didn't have all the things that helped me stay really rock solid. I knew that I had myself, and I honestly thought I was unstoppable. And it was that audacity that I thought I could use in making sure I propelled and expanded and quantum leaped and all the things. But what happened when I landed in Aussie is everything started to go wrong. Like the car broke down, the place we moved into had a surge, like we had to move out, and it was just constant. And then I just, instead of, this is where I failed to listen. I was so caught up in my external ego that I expressed, I had a huge global following. So Instagram, I think 40,000, Twitter, everything, Facebook. I'd expressed to the world that this was it for me. I'd made it. It was like my Hollywood moment, right? And I got really caught up, but then I didn't have community. I didn't even try and build community. I was trusting my online presence. This was a really big lesson for me. And so I kept pushing against and I could feel the resistance, but I was like, no, I have to make this work because I've told the world that I've moved and I've set my son up in a new school and oh my gosh, like I have to. So then what happened? There was this behind the scenes energetic shift of it being authentic and it became unauthentic because it wasn't working. But I was still showing up like it was because this is what we do. Fake it till you make it. I fucking hate that saying. And so I had to learn the hard way, and I should have come home 6 months after I made that decision, and I didn't. I stayed an extra 2 years. So over that time, I lived off whatever savings I had. I was still trying to keep up a lifestyle I couldn't afford, and before I knew it, I was making bad decisions in relationships, and it just down spiraled from there. And then one day I woke up, I was depressed with no money, and I was like, how, after everything I've been through, and I really had reached good success prior to that. I was like, how? And then that's where the shame, how do I tell my audience I'm broke? How do I tell these people? How can I possibly keep doing what I'm doing in this leadership role with nothing? So I moved home. I reconnected to my whakapapa, which is where I'm from. I did take about a year off healing. I really just, I at that point thought there was no comeback. Then I met my beautiful man who I'm with today. And this man, I wasn't expecting him to come into my life, but we sat down and we spoke for about 6 hours. We met at a friend's barbecue, and he just was he was so impressed. He was a businessman. He'd been very successful, and he was just like, I showed him through. He's like, "What do you do?" And I was like, "Well, I did do this. I've taken a bit of a break." And yeah, I love sharing the story because sometimes, like I said, together we go further. Like, yes, I had self-awareness and yes, I had to build myself up again and I had to remember who I was and why I started. But it was just a beautiful comment he said to me. And he said, "Why are you not doing it? Why are you on pause?" I said, "I've lost my confidence." Funnily enough, I'm a confidence coach now, but I had lost my faith in myself and I didn't know how to bring myself back. And it was from that conversation, he said, "Look, what do you need?" And I was like, "I don't know what I need. I know it all. I've done it all." But I said, "I just feel really unsupported." He's like, well, how can I support you? And it wasn't a financial support. It was just, he goes, "Well, I want to get together and have more would talk about this, but just that one conversation, like you were talking about, that one conversation for me made me re-trigger something. I was like, wow, he thinks what I'm doing is amazing, because it was amazing. I was impacting people's lives. I am smart. I do know what I'm talking about. I have come through the dredges and the turbulence. And it was just like, I had to make a decision. So I went home and I was like, okay, what do I need to do to start showing up again? And it was in my vulnerability. I just then decided I'll put an offer together, right? And I put an offer together and I just started to make decisions to show up in my truth. Okay, you know what? I got knocked off the horse. I got completely fucking punched in the face in the arena, and I was down, but I'm back and I'm on my knees and I'm going to be on my feet soon. And this is how I started to talk to my audience. But you know, what was so beautiful is I had a brand with integrity, because I'd been honest through the whole process. They'd seen me travel the world. They'd seen me go to all these events. They'd seen me work with beautiful women all over the world. And then they saw me lose everything. They saw me try something, right? And this is the thing. I attached so much of my success to that decision, but that decision has helped me. It was another shadow of mine, right? I had to go through that in order to understand that everything came back to the relationship I had with myself. When I let that go, when I stopped trusting myself, when I ignored the cues in my body, when I knew that relationship wasn't going to be good for me, but I still went forward with it anyway, because I needed that short-term fulfillment. You know, so it just brought me back to understanding all the things I'd been through in that process. But what I had to do was go back to pretty much what we've already discussed. Okay, where was I when I was successful? Okay, I was going to bed early. I was eating well. I was drinking good, healthy water. I was around good people. I wasn't pretending. I was, you know, getting up. And I literally, this is honestly what I did. I set my laptop up. I had no clients, but I started routine again, because I am actually very good with routine. I like being flexible, but I love routine. And I'd set my alarm at 6, I'd go for a walk, 5K walk, come back, shower. I would get dressed like I was about to take a whole day of coaching. I stepped so far into that next version, or the version that I used to be, and then I know that I could be again. And I'd dress myself up in my suits, and I would get on my laptop and I would just start writing and creating content. But I would also, in my diary, I would book in coaching calls throughout the day, even though I didn't have any. So I started to actually live exactly how I was, even though it didn't happen. And then I started to get better ideas. And then I started to become, oh my gosh, that's a great offer. Oh my gosh. And then all of a sudden someone would pop up in my inbox, like, you're so inspiring. I've watched you come back. Like, what have you, well, how can I work? And one client, and then two, and it just started to, again, compound. That took about 6 months of not pretending to the outside, like getting up and getting into a rhythm within my day before it had occurred. I took myself there, like it was already done. And I think, you know, it is amazing how powerful we are as human beings and as souls and as spirits in this human experience. It really is all there for us. It really is. And it just, that relationship that we have with ourselves and our own wairua and our own divinity, it's just like you said, the devotion and the dedication it takes is the hard part, to stay on course. Yeah. So that's kind of how I made the comeback. Yeah.
And thank you for sharing. And I love how you just explained as well about exactly what I believe in as well, is showing up as if already, embodying as if. And the difference between, like you were saying earlier, as well as like faking it till you make it, but the difference between showing up as if, taking the action as if, believing enough already once you've come to that point of realizing your vision, what you want to create, is
Mm.
still showing up as if that you were already at that point. How does she behave? How does she dress? How does she speak? What does she do day to day? Like we were speaking about earlier. This is the thing. And this was the exact, you know, this is exactly how you applied it for yourself. And a couple of things I still want to touch on as well is, sometimes I find the exact same thing of like, I'll look back at what I've accomplished in the past and recognize what a bad bitch I've been in the past, and to get like re-inspired of myself. And
Oh,
it reignites that re-inspiration of the ways that I did show up, or how I was audacious, or how I was fearless, or how I did the thing anyway through the fear, etc. But also I do want to acknowledge that sometimes people are still at the beginning of creating that
Yeah.
inspiration for themselves, of being they've been seeing the inspiration coming in, but to become the inspiration for themselves, they haven't maybe quite done it yet. But to also recognize that you have a story, you have a past, you have been through shit and come through it, even if you haven't yet created your first offer or your first
Yeah.
business or your
Yeah.
first art piece or whatever the thing is that is your true purpose. Even if you haven't fully stepped into that yet, you still have a story behind you of shit that you've overcome, of your
Yep.
parts that have like dropped you to your knees, and to re-inspire and find the gold nuggets through that to lead you into where you're going. But also understanding the importance that some people might not have that kind of support and community around them to encourage them to go forward. They might have people around them that say you're full of shit, you're
Yeah.
nothing, you're not going to make it, etc., etc. I've been blessed with having
Support.
encouragement and support, and it sounds like you've definitely also had sometimes some
Oh,
support, encouragement, but
well,
there's been
not when I first started. Mm-mm.
no, no,
Mm.
yeah,
But yeah, in recent times, yes, absolutely.
yes, but some people really just don't at all.
Yeah.
So would you encourage people to seek out mentorship through these times if they can't find it in their own external realities, finding the people that have already paved the path, already a few steps ahead of you, who are already living the result that you desire, and
Yeah.
tap into their knowledge and their wisdom and guidance?
No doubt. Like I have invested hundreds and thousands of dollars in mentors in the last 11 years. Like it's ridiculous. I could have bought a house, but that wasn't on my radar. I wanted to be the best that I could be, and I haven't even scratched the fucking surface. I know that. And I'm excited by that. But yeah, hiring others that are have walked even just 10 steps ahead of you can help you, and I think that's again, your story can become, well, it's the po of my business, my story. It is why I can relate to so many beautiful women, and why I can encourage them to own their story, and to, like, my first program was called Own Your Story. It was a 6-week program, and it was beautiful. It was such a beautiful thing to just see people really just relax into owning that it just didn't matter what happened in the past. Like, you can't allow anyone to hold you there. You can't hold yourself there. It's just such an unnecessary and wasted energy. Like, we're in the now. And I love that you speak about presence all the time. And it's not that you can go out there and hurt someone and then turn around tomorrow and go, oh, well, that was yesterday. That's not what that's about. It's just about I get to try something today, and I get to try it in a way that feels good for me. And I get to go and hire a mentor or a coach or someone that can tell me how to take these shortcuts, because we don't have time to make all the mistakes ourselves in this lifetime. You know what I mean? My mum used to say, Bub, you don't have to always make all the mistakes. Learn from your older siblings, learn from me and dad. Even though I was totally arrogant and like, oh, I'm good, 21, I thought I knew everything. But yeah, I think I couldn't even potentially think about not having that support. I have a mentor now and a business coach. I will continue to invest in her as long as I decide to want to grow. And I think if we're not growing, we're dying. Do you know what I mean? And not everybody wants to grow at rapid paces either. So it's also about you doing discovery around an inquiry around who are the best mentors for you right now.
Yeah. I love that. And again, just trusting your
Yeah.
own inner guidance, trusting when it is leading you to who you're meant to be, either tuning into their content, their resources. A lot of, mentors and guides give a lot of free resources too, or accessible. And then always recognizing when you invest in yourself, that compounds. No one can take that away from you. Nobody can ever take that shit away from you. It will always compound. So, on that note, darling, it has been an incredible, incredible conversation. What would you love to leave the listeners with? One last piece of wisdom, advice, whatever comes through for you.
You have the potential to develop new skills and perspectives in any area of your life. And it is just about finding that courage so you can develop that unstoppable confidence, and self-leadership. And yeah, you are unique. You absolutely deserve to live a life of love and fun and fulfillment and joy and abundance. And it's your birth fucking right. So go and find the places and spaces and people that can support you to really tap into your potential, because it's all there, babe. Yeah.
Let's go. And where can people find you? Tap into your work, tap into your world. Where
Yeah.
can they find you?
Well, I have my podcast, Grace Through the Fire. There's, as you said, some resources there. A lot of education around professional and personal. Also Facebook is Marissa Lewis, Auckland. So that's 2 S's. Or Instagram is Marissa_Gemma_Lewis. But yeah, just shoot me a DM, subscribe to the podcast. Yeah, there's lots of just healthy and and valuable conversations on there as well. So thank you so much for having me. I've so enjoyed this, babe.
Thank you, darling. It has been an honor. I love the conversation where it went. And I feel like we were both just so tapped in that I'm looking forward to rewatching this so I can also get all the gold nuggets from this conversation.
Yeah, I feel the same. So yeah, thank you again for having me. And yeah, just love, love, love to all your listeners.
Thank you, darling.